A Tale of a Muslim Girl and Her Infidel Lover. A novel by Dr. A. Ahmed. This is an intriguing epic story which resonates with love, resilience, courage, and sacrifice. Before we dive into the tapestry of the story, I would like to remind the reader that this novel is narrated in 3 books. Book 3. The Muslim Apostate Girl and Her Infidel Lover. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer, who may quote brief paragraphs for a review to be printed in a public newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. This novel is a work of fiction, but the entire story is based on the real life of a Muslim girl in Sudan. All names, characters, places, and events are either the product of the author's imagination or used literary. Any resemblance to real people, living or dead, events, or locales is merely coincidental. Chapter 16. It could not be a plane crash. The wreckage of the Air Canada plane had been discovered and officially announced by the government of Ankara after 6 hours. The crashed plane was found shattered into many parts and scattered over a wide area. This new discovery had refuted the earlier theory that the plane crashed due to engine failure or collided with another small plane or helicopter. If the plane had crashed, then its parts would not have been scattered over such a wide area. The CIA experts in plane crashes and terrorism began to believe the video of the Abu Masoud terrorist group. They concluded that a missile had shot down the plane. The Turkish government strongly rejected such a possibility and considered it to be a hasty conclusion. Despite that, the discovery of the plane shifted the police investigation and the world's attention in another direction. The search for the bodies of the victims became the focus of all the parties concerned. Some bodies were found by some countrymen and had already been buried by them. The CIA requested the Turkish authority to exhume those dead bodies and take them to the capital city for post-mortem. The Turkish authority rejected such a request on a religious basis. It argued that in Islam a dead body could not be buried and dug out again. By this time, the 2 angels of the graves Munkar and Nakir had already interrogated such dead people. Digging up such dead bodies would run contrary to the will of Allah for those expired Muslim people. Then the CIA members left the plane wreckage and the dead bodies' issues to be handled by the Turkish and some European police authorities, and returned back to Ankara to carry out their initial investigation concerning the controversial author of the so-called anti-Islamic provocative book. The CIA members had already suspected a conspiracy theory regarding the Muslim apostate woman Ibtihal. They had some tangible proofs in their hands that the controversial Sudanese author did not board the doomed plane. Firstly, the Turkish police authority refused to disclose where they kept her for 3 days. Secondly, the Ankara International Airport Authority had no evidence to prove that she was among the passengers of the doomed plane. Thirdly, the Turkish police refused to grant the CIA members access to the dead bodies of the 2 assassinated female passengers who were mistaken for the controversial Sudanese author. If Dr. Ibtihal was among the passengers, why then did the assassins fail to identify her, and instead they shot and killed the other 2 Muslim women, who were originally from Iran and Sudan? The CIA had already obtained information before it moved into Turkey that the passengers of the plane collectively signed a request and sent it to the government of Turkey that the author of the anti-Islamic book should not be allowed to fly with them on the same Canadian plane for their safety purposes. Under pressure, the Turkish police allowed the members of the CIA to examine the dead bodies of the 2 assassinated passengers. The U.S. team had cleared one of its suspicions as soon as it viewed the bodies of those slain female passengers. There were some resemblances between the 2 dead women and Dr. Ibtihal, but that did not identify any one of them with her. Only a person who saw the 2 immigrant women from a distance could mistake them for Dr. Ibtihal. However, the police authority had become adamant about the second demand of the CIA. Until the government of Turkey interfered, the police authority refused to reveal where it kept Dr. Ibtihal during her 3 days staying in Ankara. After pressure from some top officials in the Turkish government, the police authority revealed the hotel where Dr. Ibtihal spent her 3 days prior to the flight. The CIA members were surprised when they found out that the hotel was shut down by the police authority on the night prior to Dr. Ibtihal's flight. There was no explanation given by the Turkish police authority for the closure. It was another secret that the police authority of Ankara refused to reveal. The CIA found itself dealing with a police department run by pig-headed religious fanatics. They were also facing many mysteries clouding the stay of the Sudanese author of the anti-Islamic book in Ankara. The CIA wanted to know why she, alone among all the other passengers, was set apart and kept in that hotel. Where was the evidence that she stayed in that hotel when there was no access to any guest register to confirm her stay? Then the Turkish police authority referred the CIA to the human rights members who saw and visited the Sudanese Muslim apostate girl Ibtihal during her stay in the Lila Palace International Hotel. When they had been questioned by the American CIA, those members confirmed that she spent her 3 days in that hotel. Therefore, the CIA members had accepted the testimonies of the human rights members, but still, they wanted to know what had happened on the last night of Ibtihal's stay that led the police authority of Ankara to shut down the famous 5-star hotel. The Turkish police authority refused to give any information regarding that closure. None of the plane passengers and flight crew survived that vicious attack of Abu Masoud's deadly missile. The Turkish police, with the help of some European police authorities, were able to recover 90% of the bodies. The remaining 10% were considered to be the bodies of those victims who were buried in a hurry by the local citizens. The search team accepted the testimonies of those local citizens that the buried bodies belonged to the doomed Canadian plane. The assumed perished body of the Sudanese author Ibtihal had not been found among the recovered dead bodies, but the Turkish police concluded that the local citizens had already buried her expired body. The Muslim world once again celebrated and rejoiced over the news of the death of the hated writer of the alleged anti-Islamic provocative book. Some Muslim preachers and imams of the mosques thanked Allah for finally ridding them of that accursed woman who had 7 souls like a dog. Abu Masoud himself appeared in a video and announced that he did not kill the accursed Sudanese woman because of any monetary gain. He said he killed her because she insulted the master of creation, the infallible prophet of Islam, who had been sent by Allah as a mercy to mankind. He said further that he didn't want the accursed Shiite government of Tehran to pay him any reward, because he was also after the life of the president of Iran for helping the Muslim Shiites in Iraq to slaughter the Muslim Sunnis in Baghdad. Nevertheless, the international community all over the civilized world mourned the death of the genius author Ibtihal and blamed the Turkish government for its lack of protecting such a brave young woman and other innocent passengers and aircrew from such a vicious terrorist attack by the Abu Masoud and his Muslim terrorists. People went in silent marches in many big Western cities and carried the photo of Dr. Ibtihal. Some of them had dressed up in black garments of mourning. Some international figures like Oprah Winfrey had spoken some words of condolence for the late Sudanese author Ibtihal and the other innocent victims, and condemned the cowardly attack on the Air Canada plane. Even the President of the United States of America had appeared in the White House and delivered a brief message of condolence for the victims of the doomed Canadian plane, and strongly condemned the cowardly attack of the Abu Masoud group. In his speech, Mr. President had mentioned the controversial author Ibtihal by name, and considered her to be a symbol of women's liberation, and a new emerging advocate of freedom of speech and writing in the Third World. Moreover, the Prime Minister of Canada, speaking in the House of Commons, had condemned the cowardly terrorist attack on the Air Canada plane, and condoled all the families of the victims. He also demanded that the government of Turkey should provide the government of Canada with minute detail of those 3 days that the passengers of the hijacked Air Canada flight spent in Ankara city, and should give satisfactory answers to all the international inquiries of the investigating foreign teams. Chapter 17. The heretical Christian church in the Lila Palace Hotel. In the meantime, the American CIA team had labored for 3 days without any progress. All other foreign teams' members had tried hard to get some clues to solve the mystery of the hotel's closure and the lack of evidence for the departure of the resettled Sudanese refugee girl Ibtihal Taha Al-Amin at Ankara International Airport. The Turkish police changed its statement about the hotel's closure. According to their new report, the Lila Palace Hotel was closed before Ibtihal came to stay in it. Then they mentioned that the 5-star hotel was closed by its Christian owner prior to the morning in which the Muslim apostate woman Ibtihal left for the Ankara International Airport. How could the international hotel have been closed and still allowed a guest to check in and stay for 3 days? When the Turkish police authority realized that such a statement was contradictory in nature, they changed it and said that the hotel was shut down for precautionary measures by the police immediately after Ibtihal left for the Ankara International Airport. Then the police of Ankara claimed that they received information on the night prior to the departure of Dr. Ibtihal that a notorious Turkish drug dealer was planning to blow up the entire hotel to kill the Sudanese author of the provocative book who was hated by the Muslims of the world, and then he could get the $50 million bounty from the Iranian government. The CIA team could neither accept nor refute such a police statement. Notwithstanding, on the 4th day, the American anti-terrorist team members had succeeded in laying their hands on the first piece of evidence that solved some of their insurmountable riddles. Someone contacted a local newspaper in Ankara and informed its editor that the Turkish police made a mass arrest in the Lila Palace Hotel on the night prior to the departure of the controversial Sudanese author. The arrest came as a result of a long speech that the Muslim apostate girl Dr. Ibtihal delivered to a Christian cult that meets periodically at the famous hotel. That religious cult has a church which is not open to the public. Only rich Christians are accepted into that cult. The hotel is owned by an Indian Christian widow who is originally from Kerala in South India. Even so, among the 200 wealthy members who attended that secret meeting there happened to be some Ankara police intelligence agents undercover. In her speech, the Muslim apostate woman Ibtihal, who authored the provocative book, drew a comparison between the Lord Jesus Christ and the Prophet Muhammad. She ended her comparison by saying that the difference between the two religious founders could be compared to the difference between the Prince of Peace Christ and the angel of death Lucifer, day and night, light and darkness, paradise and hell, and by contrast God and Satan. The person who reported this matter to the local newspaper happened to be one of the rich church members who managed to escape unnoticed by the police of Ankara. The Turkish media and public have raised up a particularly important question, and the Ankara police are required to answer it as soon as possible. Is the above report true or not? The police authority of Ankara answered the question in the affirmative, but it said that Dr. Ibtihal was not arrested because she had been granted international amnesty and protection on a request that had been submitted jointly by the UN Office, Human Rights Office, and Amnesty International, and the Turkish government had accommodated that demand. The Ankara Police Authority continued to say that the woman in question had left the country in that doomed Canadian plane. However, the CIA team refused to buy that statement. The American team found it difficult to believe that the Ankara police would arrest the hearers of the objectionable speech and leave the speaker, who had allegedly likened the Prophet Muhammad to Satan who incarnated in human form. Then the CIA team members requested the Ankara police to allow them to hear the controversial speech of the Sudanese young woman Ibtihal that she spoke on the night of the arrest. Moreover, the American team wanted to speak to some of those rich church members who were arrested because they listened to that inappropriate speech. The Ankara police had rejected both requests and considered the members of the CIA team to be stepping out of their limits and interfering in local police issues. The police said that the arrest came as a result of holding a secret meeting that was meant to stir religious strife and hatred in the capital city of Turkey. Accordingly, the Sudanese Muslim apostate woman's blasphemous speech had nothing to do with the mass arrest, and for that reason, she was excluded from the charge against the Christian cult members. Besides that, the police stated that every place of worship in Turkey, whether it was a mosque, church, or temple, was supposed to be open to the public. Therefore, the Leela Palace Hotel's Christian cult violated an especially important rule of freedom of religious worship, which had been granted by the Turkish constitution to all citizens regardless of their religion, race, and gender. In addition to that, the Ankara police added that the Christian cult of the Leela Palace Hotel could not be considered a private club, that its membership was to be decided by its management. Notwithstanding, the false arguments of the Ankara police fell to the ground as soon as it appeared that the Leela Palace Hotel's Christian group was officially registered 7 years ago as a Christian church, and the Turkish government is collecting taxes from its wealthy members on a regular basis. The group members are periodically meet once a month in the same hotel, and those meetings were not conducted in secrecy. The only thing that made the Leela Hotel Church different from the other Christian churches is that its membership is exclusive to wealthy businessmen and rich women. Besides that, not everyone is welcome to attend its meeting. But if any Christian shows up in their meeting, they don't kick him out. Whether such a church is in agreement with the teachings of Jesus Christ or not is not the concern of the CIA team. The American team is certain that the mass arrest had something to do with the Sudanese author's speech, and not with the formation and doctrine of the hotel church. The American team has also begun to suspect the death of Ibtihal in that doomed Canadian plane, which had been hijacked by its pilot, and then shot down by an Islamic terrorist group. The U.S. team members strongly believed that all evidence pointed to the conclusion that the Sudanese young woman Ibtihal is either held in one of the Turkish jails, or she was killed by the Ankara police, and her remains were hidden somewhere in the city or wilderness. In either case, she did not board the doomed Air Canada plane. Chapter 18. It was a divine intervention for Dr. Ibtihal. The CIA team made another discovery, that the Leela Hotel was closed for renovation a long time ago before the Sudanese author came to stay in it. Her stay in the hotel happened after some members of the Human Rights Center in Ankara put pressure on the Turkish police authority to accommodate her in the Leela Hotel. The human rights activists wanted the author of the controversial book to be kept there because they expected that the Islamic terrorists would not think to look for her in a hotel that was already closed for renovation. The police requested the hotel's Indian owner to allow them to keep Dr. Ibtihal in her hotel for safety purposes. Although the hotel's Christian owner understood the risk involved in keeping such a controversial author in her hotel still on a religious basis, she agreed to grant her free accommodation. When Dr. Ibtihal came to stay in the hotel, there was no guest except her. The owner continued to keep her staff to help in the renovation work. Moreover, the rich members of the Church of Prosperity continued, as before, meeting in the famous five-star international hotel. The new discovery of the CIA team cast doubts on the report of Ankara's police. The report stated that the police authority shut down the Leela Hotel Palace due to the cultist activities of the Church of Prosperity, which according to the police of Ankara violated the Turkish constitution. The CIA team demanded that the police of Ankara should allow them to speak to those church members who were arrested on Sunday night. Under pressure from the Turkish government, the Ankara police allowed the CIA team to interview some of those detained wealthy church members. Everyone interviewed by the CIA team said that the Turkish police had raided the hotel on that night and arrested every church member because of the controversial speech of the Sudanese guest speaker. At that meeting, Dr. Ibtihal spoke on the teachings of the Quran about the Lord Jesus and made a remarkable contrast between Christ and the Prophet Muhammad. In her contrast, she did not speak ill about Muhammad, but made an honest and fair comparison between the life and teachings of the founder of Islam and the founder of Christianity. All interviewed members said that the Sudanese speaker Ibtihal did not say the Prophet Muhammad was the incarnation of Satan. Furthermore, all apprehended members admitted that Dr. Ibtihal was the first woman who got arrested on charges of sarcasm of the religion of Islam and derision of the Prophet Muhammad. When the Ankara police have been confronted with the collective confessions of 200 Christian members, they reluctantly admitted that the Sudanese author was arrested on Sunday night, and hence she wasn't permitted to fly on the next day morning. As soon as the CIA team got such incriminating admission from the Ankara police, It announced in the media that the controversial author of the so-called anti-Islamic provocative book was not among the dead passengers and aircrew in that doomed Canadian plane. She is still alive and kicking in one of the Turkish prisons. The breaking news is one of the greatest news reports that the world has ever heard. The world condemned the Ankara police for hiding such a piece of important information, and it gave credit to the sincere efforts of the CIA team. The CIA team's investigations into this matter revealed yet another startling piece of information. 5 top members of the Ankara police were arrested on charges of conspiracy and cover-up. It has been revealed that those officials conspired with a notorious criminal and drug lord and sold to him the hated Sudanese author. The drug lord agreed to pay $3 million to each official in the Turkish Police Enforcement Department. The deal was to pay 50% prior to the assassination, and the remaining amount after the murder was done. The officials disclosed to the drug lord the place where the Sudanese author was staying. The drug lord planned to assassinate Dr. Ibtihal on her way to the international airport on Monday morning. His main motive was to get the $50 million that the Iranian government pledged to pay to her assassin. When those high-profile officials found out that the drug lord double-crossed them by refusing to pay half of the amount prior to the assassination, and instead paid a few $1,000s to each one, they decided to stop the assassination plot and negotiate the deal once again. Therefore, the 5 top officials fabricated those religious charges against the Church of Prosperity, because they wanted to prevent Dr. Ibtihal from going to the international airport on Monday morning. They knew and understood that, if they would allow her to go to Ankara International Airport, his snipers would assassinate her, and the drug lord would get the bounty of $50 million from the Iranian government, and they would get nothing from that huge amount. So, to prevent themselves from being swindled further by the cunning drug lord, the 5 corrupt police officials decided to hide the highly priced Sudanese refugee woman until they would strike a fresh foolproof deal. Consequently, the investigations of the CIA led to the release of the members of the Church of Prosperity. Notwithstanding, the Ankara police refused to free the controversial speaker Ibtihal, and held her on the charges of speaking against the religion of Islam, and equating the Prophet Muhammad with the accursed Satan, or the devil in human form. However, the Turkish police did not provide the CIA team with any tangible evidence that Dr. Ibtihal had made such a profane statement. The police also have no recording of the so-called inappropriate speech. The 200 Christian members of the Church of Prosperity denied such an allegation. Even so, the police of Ankara claimed that they planted a person among the members to watch the activities of the private church. That secret mole had attended the meeting and heard the Sudanese speaker equating Muhammad with Satan and Jesus with the incarnation of God. The breaking news that Dr. Ibtihal had not died in the Air Canada plane, and she is still alive and imprisoned in a jail in Ankara shocked the entire world. Many Christian religious leaders in the West said that the controversial author Ibtihal's life had been rescued through a divine intervention on that fateful morning in which many passengers and aircrew of the Canadian plane were brutally killed by a Muslim terrorist group. All things worked for her good. The plot of the Turkish police, who sold her to a notorious drug lord, turned out to be a saving means for her precious soul. Nevertheless, the Muslim world has mixed feelings of anger and revenge when it heard that the accursed Muslim apostate author is still alive. Muslims of Turkey felt frustrated and disappointed when they came to know that the conspiracy of the Ankara Police Department saved the life of the contemptible Sudanese apostate woman. Other Muslims all over the world have become extremely outraged when they heard that the blasphemous Sudanese woman delivered yet another provocative speech in Leela Hotel in Ankara, and equated their infallible prophet Muhammad with Satan, who was incarnated in human form. Due to that alleged blasphemy, millions of protesters went to the streets in big cities in the Muslim world and the Arab nation and demanded that the Turkish government must pass the death sentence on the despicable Muslim apostate woman who drafted the anti-Islamic provocative book, and she also said the master of creation who was sent as a mercy to mankind was the devil in human form. Chapter 19. 200 years prison term for the blasphemous Muslim apostate woman. There is great pressure on the Turkish government from some Western countries to provide maximum security protection for the detained Sudanese resettled refugee woman Ibtihal Taha al-Amin, and hasten her trial. The human rights activists kept in close contact with Dr. Ibtihal during her stay in the jail in Ankara. The activists demanded that she should be kept in solitary confinement for her safety. She should not be exposed to any contact with other inmates. They know most of the inmates are Muslim suspects and convicts. Even the guards are Turkish Muslim women. She should not be given any food or drink by the jail authority. Some activists of the women's rights promised to provide all her meals and other necessities. The human rights activists demanded further that the Sudanese author's trial should not be open to the public. They also wanted the court's place, date, and time must not to be officially announced. The media should be kept out of the courtroom. There should be some foreign delegates allowed to attend and watch over the trial proceedings. The Turkish police and the court at first rejected those demands. After the interference of some foreign delegates, the demands of the human rights activists had been reluctantly accepted but partially fulfilled. The trial's proceedings are scheduled to be conducted on a Monday morning at 10 a.m. No one should be informed about the trial except those foreign delegates and the parties concerned. The suspect woman Ibtihal was allowed to choose her own lawyer. Human rights activists chose a reliable lawyer who always represents foreigners in the courts of Ankara. The Turkish government chose the judge and jury. The trial is scheduled to take place in the Supreme Court in the capital city of Turkey. The presiding judge is the chief judge, and his decision is always considered final and irrevocable. Around 14 foreign delegates are permitted to attend and watch over the court proceedings. The private trial began with the court prosecutor reading the charge sheet that had been prepared by the Criminal Investigation Department of the Ankara Police. The only crime the Sudanese apostate woman was supposedly committed, which led to her arrest, was that she had equated the Prophet of Islam with Satan in human form. The police of Ankara had no recording of the alleged inappropriate speech except a sole spy from the police department, who attended the Christian meeting of the Church of Prosperity. He claimed to have heard the Sudanese speaker making a malicious comparison between Muhammad and Jesus, in which he concluded that the former is Satan transformed in a human form, and the latter is God incarnated as a human being. The attorney-lawyer of Ibtihal has neither rejected the accusation nor refuted it. He only demanded that the Ankara Police Department must bring a witness apart from the single spy witness that they have provided in court. In addition, her lawyer provided the court with a collective statement signed by 200 Christian people who attended the meeting in which they denied that Dr. Ibtihal made such a disrespectful statement. Despite that, the Turkish court has rejected the collective statement of the 200 members of the church and demanded a witness other than the members of the Church of Prosperity. The main reason given by the court for rejecting those 200 witnesses is that they are all Christians, and hence their testimonies are religiously biased and therefore could not be considered reliable and acceptable evidence in a court of law. In the absence of any witness other than the Christian members of the Church of Prosperity, the court accepted the single spy witness of the Turkish police department and handed the Sudanese speaker Ibtihal Taha al-Amin 200 years imprisonment. The court's sentence is shocking to Dr. Ibtihal, her lawyer, and the foreign delegates. The chief judge of the Supreme Court said that his verdict is final and irrevocable. The condemnation of the author of the provocative book Ibtihal to 200 years imprisonment by the Supreme Court in Ankara has been met by an international outcry for justice and a demand for immediate intervention by the international community to stop such an abuse of authority. Many international and local organizations such as the United Nations Office in Ankara, the Human Rights Organization of Turkey, the Women's Rights Center in the capital city of Turkey, the Amnesty International in the UK, and the International Court of Justice in Hague, in the Netherlands, have collectively rejected and condemned such a verdict and demanded an immediate release of the innocent Sudanese young woman Ibtihal Taha al-Amin. Some Western countries have contacted the government of Turkey and demanded an immediate intervention, but the members of the parliament expressed their inability to interfere in the judicial system. They argued that the Supreme Court in Ankara is the highest authority in the country, and no one can revoke its judgment unless there is a violation of the Turkish constitution. The only highest religious authority who can revoke such a ruling is His Highness, the Mufti of Turkey. Unfortunately, His Majesty, the virtuous Mufti, had already issued a fatwa and endorsed the verdict of the chief judge. Even the President of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, had gladly accepted the court ruling and called it just and fair. It was a mere coincidence that the same High Court had recently issued a law that allowed the conversion of the Christian monument of the Orthodox Cathedral Hagia Sophia into an Islamic mosque. In fact, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan was behind such an internationally unacceptable decision of changing a church into a mosque. Everybody knew and understood the Sudanese author had been condemned by the Turkish High Court because of her so-called provocative book, and not because she called the alleged prophet of God Muhammad the devil incarnate. As a matter of fact, the High Court of Turkey seized the golden opportunity of having the greatest enemy of Allah on Turkish soil, and decided to silence her forever before she could live and write and speak more blasphemies and lies against Islam and its founder. The chief judge and his jury believed it was Allah who brought her to a Muslim country like Turkey and handed her into the hands of his followers. In this regard, the human rights activists in Ankara had been able to gather information about the judge who condemned the Sudanese author Ibtihal to 2 centuries of confinement. He is an active member of a fanatical religious group. He is also affiliated with a Shiite sect in Iran, and a staunch supporter of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. He was interviewed several times in the past concerning the trial of Dr. Ibtihal in Athens regarding her provocative book that she wrote in London, in which she allegedly said all Muslims of the world are demon-possessed terrorists. Moreover, he said she stated that every Muslim man and Muslim woman who recites the verses of the Holy Quran would become possessed by devils. Therefore, in all the interviews, he strongly condemned Dr. Ibtihal and said that he would give such an accursed Muslim apostate woman a maximum sentence if she happened to be in his country. Although the Mufti of Turkey issued a fatwa endorsing the verdict of the Supreme Court, in an interview he said such a blasphemous Sudanese woman, who was apostatized from Islam and became an infidel Christian woman, was supposed to be stoned to death for her abominable speeches and provocative writings. He said no one in human history had ever insulted the Prophet Muhammad and ridiculed the religion of Islam, as that despicable Sudanese Muslim apostate woman had done through her filthy tongue and satanic pen. Many religious groups and rich people in the Muslim world celebrated the sentence of the Ankara Supreme Court by offering sacrifices to their god Allah through slaughtering animals such as cows, sheep, goats, camels, and freely distributing their meats to poor Muslim people. In some Islamic countries, people demanded that their governments should make the day on which the accursed blasphemous Sudanese woman Ibtihal was tried and condemned in Turkey a public holiday to be celebrated by many Muslims for generations to come. Some restaurant owners in the Middle East dedicated that day to serving free food to the poor every year. Some rich people also distributed clothes, candies, cookies, and other gifts to the destitute people and homeless children. The only Muslim country that forbade its citizens from celebrating the condemnation of the blasphemous woman Ibtihal is the Shiite country, which promised to pay a bounty of $50 million to the assassin of the despicable author of the anti-Islamic book. The President of the Islamic Republic of Iran made a public speech in which he condemned the Sunni Muslims of Turkey as cowards and unbelievers. He quoted many stories of the Prophet Muhammad, in which his followers violently killed anyone who criticized him. The President of Iran mentioned a few names of poets and poetesses who criticized the infallible messenger of Allah, and the Prophet Muhammad himself ordered them to be assassinated. 1. Uqba bin Abu Mu'ayt wrote derogatory verses about the Prophet Muhammad. He was captured during the Battle of Badr, and Muhammad ordered him to be executed. But who will look after my children, O Muhammad? Uqba cried with anguish. Hell, retorted the Prophet coldly. Then the sword of one of his companions cut through the neck of Uqba. 2. Abu Afak, a man of great age, 120 years old, was killed because he had satirized the Prophet. The deed was done by Salim bin Omar at the order of the Prophet, who had asked, "Who will deal with this rascal for me?" The killing of such an old man moved a poetess, Asma bint Marwan, to compose discourteous verses about the Prophet, and she too was cruelly assassinated. 3. Asma bint Marwan was a poetess who belonged to a tribe of one of the Medina pagans. She composed a poem blaming them for obeying a false prophet, and for not attacking and killing him. When Muhammad heard about her poem, he asked, "Who will rid me of Marwan's daughter?" A member of her husband's tribe volunteered, and crept into her house that night. She had 5 children, and the youngest was sleeping at her breast. The assassin gently removed the child, drew his sword, and plunged it into her chest until it came out of her back, killing her as she slept. 4. A one-eyed man criticized Muhammad too. The Prophet sent one of his followers to kill him. His killer said, "I went to him and killed him in the most dreadful way that anybody has ever been killed. I leaned over him, stuck the end of my bow into his good eye, and thrust it down until it came out of the back of his neck." He fled back to Muhammad, who said, "Well done." The account ends, the Prophet prayed for Umayyah to be blessed by God. 5. Narrated Ali ibn Abu Talib. A Jewish woman used to criticize the Prophet. Her murderer strangled her till she died. Muhammad said no recompense was payable for her blood. Sunan Abu Dawud. 6. Fatima, who was nicknamed Kurfa, was taken as a prisoner. She was an old woman, and the wife of Malik. Her daughter and Abdullah Masada were also taken. Zayd ordered Qays to kill Kurfa, and he killed her cruelly by putting a rope to her 2 legs to tie them to 2 big camels and driving them until they split her body into 2 halves. Kurfa was killed for no reason except she was a chieftainess, and a competitive to Muhammad's claim to be the main leader and highest authority in Arabia. 7. 2 Jewish singers sang a song in which they criticized Muhammad. The Prophet ordered both girls to be killed, therefore, they were both brutally murdered. 8. A blind man had a freed concubine, Walid, who used to insult the Prophet and say bad things about him. He told her not to do that, but she did not stop, and he rebuked her, but she did not heed him. One night, when she started to say bad things about the Prophet and insult him, he took a short sword or dagger, put it on her belly and pressed it and killed her. Her child fell between her legs and became covered by her blood. The following morning that was mentioned to the Messenger of Allah. He called the people together and said, "I ask by Allah the man who has done this action, and I order him by my right over him that he should stand up." The blind man stood up and said, "O Messenger of Allah, I am the one who did it. She used to insult you and say bad things about you. I forbade her, but she did not stop, and I rebuked her, but she did not give up her habit. I have 2 sons like pearls from her, and she was kind to me. Last night she began to insult you and say bad things about you. So I took a dagger, put it on her belly and pressed it till I killed her." Thereupon the Prophet said, "Bear witness, there is no blood money due for her." Classed as Sahih or authentic hadith by Albani in Sunan Abi Dawud, hadith number 4361. After mentioning those examples, Mr. President of the Islamic Republic of Iran said, "No one ever before had called the Prophet Muhammad the incarnation of Satan, as that accursed Sudanese Muslim woman had said in her abominable speech which she delivered in a country where 99% are Muslims as Turkey." Then the president ended his speech by encouraging the Turkish people to violently kill Dr. Ibtihal because her blasphemies against the infallible prophet of God had exceeded all the red lines set by the religions of the world. Then the president renewed his fatwa and promised a reward of $50 million to anyone who will kill the cursed Sudanese woman Ibtihal Taha al-Amin. After the terrorist president of the Islamic Republic of Iran once again farted his satanic fatwa, many Iranian men and Muslim women appeared on camera and vowed by their drops of blood to cruelly kill the accursed wife of Satan who dared to insult the master of creation, the one who came to complete the moral perfections, the seal of the messengers and prophets of God, and who was sent as a mercy to mankind, Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn Kilab, may the prayers and peace of Allah be upon him.